What happens when a country music superstar and one of America's most beloved morning show hosts clash on live television? The answer is more explosive than anyone could have imagined. It started like any other morning at Rockefeller Plaza. Cameras humming, lights warming up, audience coffee cups steaming in their hands. Al Roker, America's favorite weatherman, was doing what he does best. Cracking jokes, greeting fans, making the world feel like a friend's living room. Nobody had any reason to think this morning would be any different. Jason Aldean had arrived just before sunrise. Jeans, black button-down shirt, his signature baseball cap pulled low. The man looked calm, comfortable even. He joked with producers, sipped coffee from a paper cup, and talked easily about his new album and upcoming tour. It was supposed to be routine. A light-hearted conversation about music, family, and life on the road. But live television has a way of taking on a life of its own. And this morning, that easy charm was about to crumble, under the weight of one question that would turn the air in the studio electric. At 8:15 a.m., the red light blinked on. Al Roker smiled warmly into the camera. We're here with country music superstar Jason Aldean, who's been lighting up the charts and gearing up for another massive tour. Jason, good to see you, man! Jason grinned back. Always good to be here, Al. Thanks for having me. The first few minutes were smooth. Classic morning show material. Jason talked about how grateful he was for his fans, about the stories behind his songs, the energy of performing live. He spoke lovingly about his kids, the struggle to balance fame with family, the way his wife kept him grounded. The audience was eating it up. But then Al leaned in just a bit. His tone was still kind, but his words carried a new weight. So Jason, he began, your music has always connected with a certain audience. But lately there's been a conversation about who feels welcome at your shows and who doesn't. Some say your brand of country music doesn't speak to everyone. How do you respond to that? Jason's smile froze for half a second. He wasn't angry, not yet. But that question changed the temperature in the room. Well, Al, Jason said carefully, I make music for people who love country music. I don't sit around thinking about demographics. I tell stories about where I come from and what I believe in. If people connect with that, great. If not, that's okay too. I'm not trying to be everything to everyone. Al nodded, still friendly but not satisfied. Sure, I get that. But when you talk about values and where you come from, some people hear that as code for something else. There's been criticism that country music and artists like you create a space that feels exclusive, not inclusive. Does that concern you at all? Jason's jaw tightened. The charm slipped just a little. I think that's unfair, he said. I've never done anything to make anyone feel unwelcome. My shows are for everyone. I've got fans from all walks of life. The idea that I'm somehow excluding people just isn't true. That's a narrative pushed by people who don't actually listen to my music. The studio audience shifted in their seats. They could feel it. The air was thick now, heavy with something unsaid. Al pressed on. But Jason, it's not always about what you say. It's about the imagery, the themes, the culture around your music. When you sing about small-town life and traditional values, that resonates differently for different people. For some, it feels like home. For others, it feels like a reminder of places where they weren't accepted. Jason let out a quick, incredulous laugh. So now I can't sing about my own life? I can't write songs about growing up in a small town because it might make someone uncomfortable? Every artist writes from experience. Nobody questions that when it's another genre. But when it's country, when it's me, I'm suddenly supposed to apologize. For where I come from? The audience was silent now. No clapping, no laughter. Just tension. Al stayed composed, his voice even. I'm not asking you to apologize. I'm asking if you understand why some people might feel alienated. There's a difference between celebrating your roots and creating a space that unintentionally pushes others out. Jason leaned forward. Who exactly is being pushed out, Al? I see people of all kinds at my concerts, families, kids, folks who look like me and folks who don't. The only people who seem to have a problem are the ones who already decided they don't like country music. That's not exclusion. That's preference. And then Al dropped the question everyone knew would come. Jason, he said, voice steady but sharp. After your song Try That in a Small Town came out, there was a lot of controversy. People said the lyrics and imagery painted a very specific and uncomfortable picture. Do you understand why that happened? Jason's eyes locked onto Al's. The calm dissolved. "Here we go," he muttered. "I knew that's where this was headed. You didn't bring me here to talk about my music. You brought me here to ambush me." "Jason," Al said, raising his hands, "this isn't an ambush. It's a legitimate question. The song sparked a national conversation. You can't pretend it didn't." "A national conversation?" Jason shot back. "You mean a manufactured controversy. That song was about standing up for your community, not about hate. But instead of listening, people twisted it. And now you're sitting here doing the same thing." Al's tone sharpened. "Jason, when you release a song about taking justice into your own hands, filmed in front of a courthouse with a violent history, you have to expect questions. You can't separate intent from impact." Jason stood up suddenly, startling the crew. "Responsibility? You want to talk about responsibility? How about the responsibility of the media? Not to twist people's words to fit a narrative?" Al stood too, matching his height but not his anger. "I'm not twisting anything, Jason. I'm asking you to explain. If you can't handle tough questions, maybe you shouldn't do interviews." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. The audience froze. Jason stared at Al, breathing hard. "You're right," Jason said finally. "I shouldn't be doing this. Because this isn't an interview, it's a setup." He unclipped his microphone, the sound of it snapping off echoing through the silent studio. A producer rushed forward, pleading with him to calm down. Al stood motionless, watching. "Jason, sit down," Al said quietly. "Let's talk this through." Jason shook his head. "You ambushed me, accused me of things I never said, dragged up a controversy that's been blown out of proportion. And now you want to talk like adults? No, Al, I'm done." Al's tone softened slightly. "This isn't a hit piece. These are questions your fans and critics want answered. You have a huge platform. You can't just walk away from that." Jason ran a hand through his hair, his voice trembling with frustration. "You keep saying legitimate concerns, but have you ever actually listened to my song? Or did you just read headlines and decide I was guilty?" "I listened," Al replied. "And I understand what you say it's about. But you can't control how people interpret it. And when many interpret it as threatening, you have to acknowledge that." "Why?" Jason snapped. "Why do I have to acknowledge something that's wrong? If people misinterpret my song, that's on them. I'm not responsible for their bad faith reading." Al took a step forward. "Art doesn't exist in a vacuum. The location, the imagery, it all matters. You filmed that video at a courthouse tied to a lynching. That's not ancient history." Jason's voice cracked with fury. "It's my hometown, Al. That building means something to me. I didn't choose it for symbolism. I chose it because it's part of where I'm from. But you and others went digging for scandal. That's not reporting. That's character assassination." The control room debated cutting to commercial, but the cameras kept rolling. No one could look away. Al's voice was firmer now. "If asking questions feels like character assassination, maybe the problem isn't the question." Jason exhaled, his hands trembling slightly. "You've already made up your mind. This was theater from the start." "If I've made up my mind," Al countered, "it's from what I've seen." "You've been defensive instead of empathetic." "Empathy?" Jason's laugh was bitter. "Where's the empathy for me, Al? For an artist who poured his heart into something real, only to have it twisted? I've been called every name in the book. My family's been threatened. And you sit here acting like I deserve it. When you have a platform like yours," Al said sharply, "your words have consequences. You can't claim victimhood when your art makes people feel unsafe." Jason stepped closer, his voice raw. "Unsafe? It's a song, Al. 3 minutes of music. Nobody's unsafe because of a country song. You and the media turned it into something it's not." "It's not benign to everyone," Al replied. "For some, that language of small-town justice recalls real violence. Maybe they're not looking to be offended. Maybe they've lived through what that rhetoric represents." Jason's eyes glistened, not from tears, but from sheer exhaustion. "I thought about it, and I rejected that logic, because it requires me to believe that intent doesn't matter, that I'm guilty no matter what I say. That's not how art works." The audience sat frozen, watching two men talk past each other, both convinced they were right. Al's voice softened, but the conviction remained. "To dismiss people's pain like that, it's not strength, Jason, it's denial." Jason shook his head. "My impact is millions of fans who feel seen, who feel proud of where they come from. I raise money for causes. I support my community. That's real impact, Al, not this fake outrage you keep feeding. The outrage was real, Al replied quietly. You can call it manufactured, but the hurt people felt wasn't imaginary. The hurt was taught, Jason insisted. People were told to be upset, and they obeyed. You needed a villain, and I was convenient. So everyone who disagreed with you was just manipulated? Al shot back. Nobody had genuine concerns? Not when they didn't even listen to the song, Jason replied. That's not genuine, that's mob mentality. Al's voice hardened. You knew what you were doing. Jason, you knew the imagery would provoke reaction. Now that it did, you're pretending to be the victim. Jason's frustration boiled over. You think I wanted this? To have my name dragged through the mud? My family harassed? Nobody wants that. But I'm not going to stop. Writing songs because a few people read bad faith into them. Then maybe, Al said coldly, you should have thought about that before you released something so loaded. You know this industry. You know how the world works. Jason's fists clenched at his sides. I released a song I believed in. A song about values I live by. I won't apologize for that. I won't filter my art through fear of offense. If I have to do that, I might as well stop creating. Nobody's asking you to censor yourself, Al said. Just to be aware of the world around you. When being aware means assuming I'm guilty from the start, Jason replied, then yeah, it's too much to ask. Jason, nobody called you a bigot. Jason gave a hollow laugh. Oh, really? You want me to show you the articles? The tweets? The headlines? Let's not pretend this was polite conversation. I was branded a monster overnight. Those were individuals, Al said firmly. Individuals repeating the same talking points, Jason shot back. And where do you think they got them, Al? For a long moment, neither man spoke. The studio was utterly silent except for the faint hum of the lights. Jason finally took a deep breath, his voice calmer but still edged with fire. You want me to admit something? Fine, I'll admit this. Maybe I don't understand every perspective. Maybe I don't know what every listener feels when they hear my song. But I know what I meant when I wrote it. I know what it stands for to me, and I'm tired of having my own art explained to me by people who never cared to understand it in the first place. Al's gaze didn't waver. And that's exactly why this conversation matters. Because whether you meant to or not, you started something bigger than you. That's what culture does. That's what responsibility means. Jason stared at him for a moment that felt endless. Then, without another word, he picked up his baseball cap, turned and walked off the set. The producers scrambled. The camera operators didn't know whether to cut or follow him. Al Roker stood silently for a moment, hands clasped, the weight of what had just happened settling over the studio. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. We'll be right back. The screen faded to commercial, but the story didn't end there. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation began flooding social media. Twitter lit up. Some called Al brave for holding a celebrity accountable. Others said Jason was right to walk out. The debate raged about art, intention, free speech, and outrage. And maybe that's the irony. The song that was supposed to spark conversation had done exactly that. But not in the way anyone expected. What happened that morning wasn't just an interview gone wrong. It was a collision between two Americas, two ways of seeing the world. Both convinced they're defending something true. Jason Aldean left the building that day angry, misunderstood, maybe even betrayed. Al Roker stayed behind, calm on the outside but shaken by what unfolded. And the rest of the country watched, argued, and took sides. Because in that studio, for just a few minutes, live on national television. America wasn't watching a weather segment or a music promo. It was watching a cultural fault line crack open in real time. And no matter which side you're on, one thing is certain. This wasn't just about a song anymore. It was about who gets to tell the story of America and who feels seen in the music that tries to define it.